Thank you so much for taking the time, Ryan. It's a pleasure to meet you, if only digitally. I got stuck into the game, haven't quite finished yet, just to set our sort of spoiler territory. I'm
Right
just
on.
post my first experience actually playing as Venom, which was a wonderful surprise to come in the game. But if we kind of just go back to the start in terms of where I want to get to, if we could just start out with your experience in sort of coming to starting this game after the huge success of the first game. What was sort of the mission statement in your head as the sequel got rolling? What was written on the whiteboard once you guys got underway? Like, what do we have to achieve with the sequel?
Yeah, I mean, I think our big things were, it's Spider-Man 2. We have two Spider-Men now, two Spider heroes. So having Miles Morales and Peter Parker, who are both characters that people love, have really responded to, and that we have a unique opportunity to work with both of them in our universe, right? On our Marvel's New York, we have both. So making sure that we did a great job with both of those characters, and making sure that they had their own hero's journey that they're going on in the story, but also that it all tied together into an epic Spider-Man adventure that everyone was hoping for. That was really the number one thing. We were really excited about the PlayStation 5. We're really excited about pushing our spectacle moments, so that the Marvel cinematic action in the open world experience, we wanted to push that really far. And we also wanted to make sure that we balance that out with the human elements, the man behind the mask, having that come through both in those missions, with the friends and family of our spider heroes, but also in the open world content where you can interact with people in the neighborhood and stuff like that. And then, once we realized it was going to be a story featuring the symbiote, we really wanted to make sure that, well, when Peter has the symbiote, we have power and transformative elements that brings to the gameplay, to his storyline as well, in terms of his interactions with his friends and family, and just to really go strongly into the symbiote and what it means for our heroes.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so much to get into there, but just to start out on the technical level, what did the PS5 allow you to do, and what were you most excited about from that mechanical standpoint?
Yeah.
And how much freedom did that offer to you? Was there anything that you could particularly highlight?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, really, if you think about the Spider-Man experience, it's a lot of open world traversing, right? So our swinging, and now with the web wings, we're able to go so much faster because of the PS5. It's fast loading architecture, the hardware and the software that supports that. So that translates directly to the player experience of being Spider-Man. You swing and you build up speed. Again, that top speed is much higher than it used to be. And then we were able to add, interactive sort of environment elements for the web wings, so that you can get not only the wind tunnels that give you huge boost of speed, but also the updrafts that shoot you up in the air. And so now you're able to weave those things together, the web wings and the swinging, to build and maintain that speed, that height. So that's number one for the Spider-Man experience. I think when I talk about the epic set pieces, we're able to build those much more effectively on the PlayStation 5, because that fast loading, we can go from interior to exterior much more easily. We can take you across the city in a spectacle moment. And so that's really exciting, because it speaks to that goal of really elevating our action adventure experience there. And then hopefully, people have heard that you can switch between our two Spider-Men, right, in the open world, and that experience is so smooth with the PlayStation 5. So that's terrific. As well as just fast travel, right? You can get district progress and unlock fast travel, and again have a really just seamless experience loading from the map straight into a location in the open world. And that, I think, it all puts just fits together in a really great package, powered by the loading speed of the PlayStation 5 and how it pushes to the player experience directly.
Just on traversal there, just to put a slightly finer point on it from a kind of a slightly crunchier perspective, because for me, that's always the thing that almost defines the moment-to-moment gameplay of feeling like Spider-Man when you're playing a Spider-Man game, right? And there's been a lot of attempts to bring Spider-Man onto various consoles that did to greater or lesser success, but it's almost that thing that really defined Marvel Spider-Man was the moment you picked it up. You were like, oh my God, this feels like Spider-Man. This feels
Yeah.
viscerally good to play. Could you talk a little bit about what are the maybe lesser known or background elements or the little touches to your mind that make Spider-Man feel like Spider-Man when you're playing him?
Sure. Yeah, I would say I mean, what you're saying is really true. When we started working on Spider-Man, targeting that Spider-Man 2018 game, the first thing we started doing was working on swinging. Right.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
knew that had to be what we're going to do. And I would say that maybe a couple of the most important things. One is just the transitions between the different moves that you can do and keeping them as smooth and really as physics based as possible, so you're maintaining that momentum. That's super important. Back in sort of starting on the first game, that transition from you're swinging and you hit a wall. What happens? Well, do you stop? That doesn't feel like Spider-Man. No, you go and you get, now you're up heading up the wall. Now you've got some controllability there too. Finding those places where the transitions and we're able to smooth them out. And that was really a transformative moment of the experience where it became more smooth, and that was something that then we could build on throughout the game. I think another thing, this is a very sort of, to borrow your word, crunchy topic, but the camera work that backs that swinging, and actually all of our traversal, that is so important. It's what really, it's a visual medium in a lot of ways, and whether it's the camera that pitches with you as you move around,
Yes.
maybe it's a little FOV and the push of the camera, that really puts you in that experience as Spider-Man, and so that's really really important. And we found that, every new mechanic, every new move that we add, that's also something that has to be considered. If you think, we have a loop-de-loop move now, that is huge, made by the camera. The impact of the camera there is so super important. So, and then I'll just mention, our audio team does a terrific job, and our visual effects team do a terrific job with getting that sense of speed coming through both, like I said, the camera feedback, but also, rushing by particles in the air, hearing the sort of sonic changes and changing the audio scape as you go faster or higher. Those are both really
I
important
really
too.
noticed that I yeah, just definitely that the audio work was so amazing. Just the mix of when you change verticality of going down to almost street level and just hearing the little snippet of like the sound of a siren or the sound of a conversation, and then as you go back up, it's so well layered to give you that sense of speed and motion. I completely vibe with that.
Yeah.
And just on that, you've got the audio and the visual component, the traditional sort of avenues for any game to hit you. But with the PS5, you've also got that haptic feedback. So there's like a literally kind of visceral way of feeling a
hmm
tactile sense of the world. Could you talk a little bit about how you incorporated haptics into the game to give people another dimension?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the prime examples for that is all of our new abilities that the players have for like the symbiote punch, symbiote strike, those type of moves. Those sort of feedback responses on the controller, again, they're authored by our audio team, who has now done a few games on the PlayStation 5, Ripped Apart, Ratchet and Clank Ripped Apart, as well as Miles Morales. So they're getting some great experience with how the haptics respond, and they're able to give us that high definition rumble response that really sells those heroic moments in combat, or even in again our set pieces where it might be a cinematic, but you're still experiencing it there, and the controller is really helping put you in that moment. And then also, as you play through the game, there's places where we've been able to use those triggers. The triggers have a force feedback element where you can work with the resistance, and we can author where that responds and how it responds. And that's actually been a nice element we were able to add in multiple places over the game to give you that feel of interaction.
Sure. Just off the crunchier stuff for a moment to look at the bigger picture of the narrative. As you say, Spider-Man 2, the title works on a few different levels. We've got two Spider-Man now. Could you talk a little bit about how you guys approached interweaving that switchability between Miles and Peter and their narratives? How did you think about approaching a dual narrative that both gave equal weight to each of them and allowed them to interact interestingly? Like those little touches of fighting someone on street level and then Miles or Peter swings in are so good.
Yeah.
But could you just talk about how you think about those two halves of the game?
Yeah. So, number one, we definitely want to make sure that our heroes have their own hero's journey that they're going on, right? Their character has an arc that goes across the game, and it's reflective of their where they are in life, right, and where they are both relationships with I guess each other and with their friends and family. And so, looking at Peter, he's got a new job at the beginning of the game. He wants to take the next step in life with Mary Jane. And then Miles is also looking at that next step in life, but he's a senior in high school. He's trying to figure out what's next for him. He sees his friends sort of knowing what's next for them, and he's not quite sure. So hopefully that puts people in the sort of some situations that resonate with the heroes, and so there's a little bit of empathy that the audience has and the players have. And so then, it, to be honest, our approach is very, very iterative, right? We do a lot of in the initial phase, it might be whiteboarding or sort of one sheet of how things are going to work together. So it's a lot of taking the big moments that we can imagine in our heads, the smaller moments, and sort of weaving them together, making sure, hey, is that a solid evolution for our character? Is that taking us in a place that we want to go? And then also, do they fit together, right? And I think one of the things that we've learned over the years, a lot of support from Marvel, is that some of the best Spider-Man stories are where that personal life and the superhero life collide, right? And so looking for those opportunities when we're thinking about who we want to feature and how we want to sort of sketch the arcs of these characters together, that's really important. And so it leads us to, I guess, hopefully a story that all does fit together.
And it must be quite an interesting narrative challenge as well as an opportunity, because in the modern context, as you say, there are so many Spider-Man stories, and what it means to be Spider-Man is very different in 2023 than it was 40 years ago. And even there's so many iconic iterations of the character. Could you talk a little bit about, to your mind, what unifies every version of Spider-Man, or within the game, unifies Miles and Peter? What is the thing that makes them Spider-Man? And then talk a little bit about what are the things that make them unique as characters. Where are those points of dissonance?
Yeah, I mean, I think what makes Spider-Man so relatable as a character, whether it's Peter or Miles, is that they are a person, right? They are a human, a man behind the mask in this case, and you're able to see those human concerns reflected in what they're doing. A lot of times, when Spider-Man wins, Peter loses, or vice versa, and so that element of trying to balance the different parts of their lives, and it's really always a struggle. I think that's something that certainly resonates with me. I think it resonates with a lot of people, and I think it's something that's really core to the character. Again, I think for us, we have this great opportunity of having two spider heroes in our world, and so over the course of our series, we've had Peter be the mentor and be teaching Miles, sort of showing him the ropes of being a spider sort of hero. And then in this game, they start as equals, right? They're partners in our Marvel's New York. They're defending the city. And then their relationship, it frays over the course of the game a bit, and then we want to see them come back together as a Spider team, right? In the end, and I think reflecting our story arc in the relationship there between Peter and Miles. So and I guess, yeah, I won't spoil anything, but their relationship is super important for the game, of course.
Yeah. And could you talk a little bit about, just on relationships and on Miles particularly, the opportunities that the game offers to sort of uh, offer different perspectives from different characters in terms of like different ethnicities, different levels of ability around, like we've seen a very particular kind of person be a superhero for a lot of the golden age of comics, right? And it seems like there was a very intentional focus in this game to show more of a diversity of perspective in terms of the kind of stories that you can tell.
Yeah, definitely. I think diversity and representation is a great opportunity for us with these characters. Miles has his heritage that we're reflecting in the game, as well as all the connections, whether it's Genki or Haley, that also are there. And so I think even as we create the stories for our open world content, we're looking at, how do we bring the representation for these neighborhood districts into the game. So yes, it's definitely a huge opportunity. I know it's something that resonates with our team at Insomniac and all the diverse people that we have on the team, and we're really proud to support that.
Yeah. And just on diversity of gameplay opposed to sort of diversity of representation. Something that
Sure.
I really noticed about the game was that balance between, like you say, those really high spectacle moments, fighting Sandman, fighting Lizard, fighting Venom, whatever, and then really well balanced with the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man missions, like the intentionally just zeroing down, almost lowering the stakes, but kind of upping the emotion. The one that really stuck out to me was trying to find someone's grandfather who was struggling with dementia, and then sitting on a park bench with him. And it was a really nice way of taking away from, busting through a building and all those really high octane moments. Could you talk a little bit about why that was important to you to include those quieter, softer, more resonant moments?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big effort from our team to really, I think it's really representing that human side, whether it's the human side of our superhero characters or whether it's the human side of humanity, I guess, of the people that live in New York, and giving us that balance, that those opportunities to have the heart, the humor, and the just the connection, I think, with the people of the city, and our heroes. I think it speaks to that sort of core uh, DNA, that sort of core concept of Spider-Man as also being a regular human behind the mask.
Well, on humanity, another thing that really sticks out to me with Spider-Man is that, the great sort of rogues gallery of villains that he has. And so often with Spider-Man, the villains are someone that he, either Miles or Peter, have a very deeply personal connection with and an emotional connection to. Like, almost all the villains are people that he, in a slightly different world, could be having dinner with, like whether it's like the
Yeah.
Osborns, whether it's the Doc Ock, and so could you talk a little bit about the place that villains have in the story and how you guys approached humanizing each of them in their own stories? And in some ways, they're all the hero of their own story.
Yeah, I mean that's actually that way of putting it that you just said is really true. A lot of times the great Spider-Man villains have almost like a great motivation or a great goal, and they're going about it the wrong way, right? They're going about it the way that leads to evil and destruction, but they think that it's achieving something that if you just sort of wrote it down, that sounds, yes, we want to achieve that. But and then the other thing, just as you mentioned, the great Spider-Man stories are when the superhero and the personal collide, right? And that's I think really reflected in the fact that oftentimes those villains do come from their personal life and they are part of that human side, and it escalates and pushes up into the superhero conflict that we have.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
could you talk a little bit about Craven, because Craven is a little bit different from the other villains in that he's come from the outside, both in a geographic sense, but also he doesn't have that personal connection to either of them. He's very different from almost all the other villains in that way. Could you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about like, how you approached Craven as a villain to make him intimidating, but also to weave in that human motivation element to him?
Yeah, I think I'll speak a little bit for the writing staff who did a tremendous job. John Paquette is our narrative director, crafting that character. So because he's pretty mysterious, right? But he does have a human motivation, but it's complex. It's a bit nuanced, and so I think the development of how much does Craven talk? What does he say? How do we communicate his motivations? Had to be a little more subtle than other villains, where you might understand them sort of by default, but also Craven is very menacing and very intense. If you look at the villains like Lizard or Venom, clearly they're monstrous and they're intense, and it's going to be a crazy showdown if you fight. But Craven, he's a man, but his intensity is very high, right? And he brings his goal and sort of his motivations for coming to New York are very personal to him, and but they're just not sort of right written on his sort of like advertising exactly what he wants to do, right? It's a little bit mysterious, and you have to tease it out as you go through that journey in the game.
And of course, the other great villain in Spider-Man lore, which we get to encounter in Spider-Man 2, is Venom. Could you talk a little bit about how you approached Venom? How Venom is such a physically intimidating villain. He's horrific, monstrous. They almost John Carpenter-esque, like the Thing element that he has to him. But could you talk a little bit about how you brought Venom to life? And to your mind, what were the key things that you had to get right? Like, what makes a depiction of Venom work? And what were the things that you were like, no, we can't do that because that's going to take away from the inherent venomness of him?
Yeah, I think Jacinda Chu is our art director who did an amazing job with that character design. Some of the things that were really important is the tongue, right? The tongue of Venom and the mouth and how his face works and what how expressive it is. So I think that's really important. We wanted Venom's size to be impressive and scary and reflect the sort of growing power. And I think that's the other thing. It's Venom is pure menace and pure power. And so once Venom has a hold of the host, it really just there are no limits anymore. And so I think that power and that transformation is the other element of the symbiote, and we see that with our Peter gameplay, where even like the symbiote strike as he dashes across the combat space, that's a crazy visual, right, with all the tentacles. And then when as that as we introduce Venom, that continues that sort of power and transformation. But when Venom is attacking, we should see a lot of transformative elements like that.
Yes. And I know I'm mindful of your time now, and I know we're down to our last couple of minutes. And just a couple more questions, just for our more general audience, because this is going to be, I'll do a write up for our digital side, which can be a bit crunchier, but for the TV to people who might not be as experienced with video games. Could you talk a little bit about what the production of a AAA game like this is like in terms of the motion capture, in terms of the sort of the cinematic elements capturing Yuri and Naji's performances for people who might not be as familiar with the kind of scale of production that we're talking about here?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a multi-year effort where we'll have an early pre-production where we're feeling out what the story might be, we're feeling out what our key gameplay elements might add, and then as that story comes into focus, there will be a huge staff of cinematic animators at Insomniac and others that are building these story moments. They go to the motion capture stage, performance capture stage. It is now the actors will get all of their the dots and the little reference points on them, and we'll build sets so that certain stunts work in real space as well. And so a lot of times those performance captures have both the VO performance with a camera on the face as well as the motion. But other VO lines, of course, done in a recording booth as well. So we have both that need to be done, and that process of bringing those characters to life is a huge team effort. When our animation director Bobby Coddington and his additional directors that he works with are on that set, they're really coaxing those performances, directing them, imagining how they're going to play out in the sets that we have in our game, and then after we have all that data, there's still a whole process of integrating the visual effects, the audio effects, the lighting that really sells the moment. And so it's a huge team effort from beginning to end, and hopefully it adds up to a story and those really personal moments up close with our characters that really resonate with the players.
Yeah, it seems like as time, because people will be obviously familiar with MCU Spider-Man, but as time goes on and as gaming kind of moves further into the mainstream as a delivery mechanism for those kind of rich, incredible stories, could you touch on a little bit of what makes gaming a unique medium for telling a story? Because it's got all of the elements of cinema. It's got the writing, it's got lighting, it's directing, it's got actor capture, but there's that extra thing of player agency in there. Could you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that?
We're just
yeah.
bang
I
on
mean,
time, Finn. So Ryan, if you just we'll just wrap this one up with the quickie one, and then we'll have to jump off. But please finish the answer for Finn, if that's okay.
sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
it's really that interactive element of what the players can do that brings the combat sequences to life in a different way. It brings our story moments to life because they are seamlessly from combat into those story moments. But also in the open world, you're able to spend more time with those characters. You're able to, in our game, choose who you want to play as, and we're able to do additional storytelling with phone calls and stuff like that. So you're able to live in that world just like we have podcasts that we listen to, just like our friends will hit us up on the phone. We'll get those same connections with the world that you live in, and you actually get to spend more time with the characters in a game than you will in a movie.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just one very quick final sentence, just for someone that's never played a video game before, but watches this on our 6 p.m. news broadcast and is like, "Oh, I've never played games, but I really love Spider-Man." What would you just say as your very quick pitch to someone who's on the fence about picking up the game, what would you say?
We'd love to have you play. It's an epic Spider-Man adventure featuring 2 spider heroes in Marvel's New York, the way you've always imagined it. So please pick it up and join in.
Great. Hey, thank you so much, Ryan. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for taking the time.
So great talking with you as well.